You're listening to the Simply Strategic Ministry podcast hosted by Patrick Weichel. Our goal is to help you grow your ministry through simple strategies and scalable systems. With over a decade of ministry experience, we know that these strategies and systems will bring value to you as a leader and to your entire team.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Simply Strategic Ministry podcast. I'm joined in the studio today with a new friend of mine, Sean. He is a coaching client, excited to do some coaching today on the podcast. And Sean, we were talking before we started hitting record. And man, there's some stuff that you're going through and dealing with that I think we can really help out with today. But man, why don't you give everybody the intro that you gave me? Let them know who you are, how long have you been in your current context, what do you do in overseeing ministry, and talk a little bit about what you were doing and now what you're doing now. And let's dive in and see if we can't help you with some simple strategy and scalable systems.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, my name's Sean. I am now the youth director at Grace Church in Worcester. That's Ohio. And I've been here for going on, I want to say this is my 6th year, actually. I started off as just an intern. That moved into a long-term internship residency type of thing. And then I was our middle school coordinator for pretty much four straight years before this past January. I got called up to the big leagues, and now I'm our Grace Youth Director. And that was through a time where we just launched a new campus in the past year. So we went from one main campus to 2 campuses now. And then also in the past year, we've also seen our team transition a little bit as the supervisor that I've served under the entire time that I've been here, who I'm still really close with and is an absolute mentor to me. I'm super grateful for him, but he just moved up to be our lead pastor of Next Gen. So he had been in my role overseeing 7th through 12th grade. And now he's overseeing, cradle to college age. His ideas have expanded quite a bit, but now I'm stepping into the role of 7th through 12th grade. So jump from, just looking over 2 grades. Now I've got 6 grades under my belt, and also have a team that I'm managing that had just been a lot of my peers previously, but now I'm overseeing in a management role.
Yeah, man, there's so much in that. We haven't even got to the coaching part. There's so much in that I just want to talk about, to be honest, for a second. Dude, could you if you could tell younger people, to be honest, most of our audience is going to be student pastors, but I mean, there's other ministry roles and even people who are, interning and getting into it. Dude, what was the stuff that saw you through the intern to director to now overseeing the whole thing? I mean, in 6 years in one spot, that's unheard of now. Could you just speak to that for a minute before we do coaching? Because I feel like there's probably some insight and maybe wisdom in there as well, I'm sure, about, man, what does it take to do something like that? Obviously God's favor, but speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So I feel like to get the full picture, I have to go back a little bit further even than that. So when I was in college, I actually was studying pre-med. I got a biology degree. And
you're way smarter than me, is what you're saying. He's like, dude, there's nothing you can tell me.
To be fair, I haven't used it, so that only goes so far. But February of my senior year of college, I felt like I felt like I'd been getting called to ministry for a lot longer than that, but I finally answered the call. And so God kind of placed some different things in my path that were just perfect stepping stones for me. Right after college, my wife and I moved to a new area, and she was an intern at the church that I'm currently at Grace Church. And we fell head over heels for it. It was originally going to be just a 3 to 4 month thing. And we decided to say no, we're moving to the area. This is going to be our church home. So, one piece of that is that I love where I'm at. I love our leadership. I love our church. We have great people, a great volunteer system. All of that makes it easy. I'll say that much. But in that process, I just really felt that I was being specifically called to go into student ministry here. And the funny thing is, there was a number of things that kind of looked like obstacles at different times. And just, I think for me, having the clarity in my calling of I'm not just called to student ministry, but I'm called to student ministry at Grace Church in Worcester, Ohio, was something that gave a lot of clarity to what I was doing. Whether that looked like my internship was ending and I had to figure out like, what am I supposed to do? I'm a newlywed and I got to figure out like what the next, 12 weeks looks like because there's no job like necessarily lined up. So, I worked at Chipotle for a little while because it was very clear to me, like I need to be at this church doing student ministry, whether I'm working a factory job and doing that, or whether I'm, full-time vocational ministry in the office at Grace Church, then that's where I need to be. But I think in my prayer life and my time with God, it was just very much impressed on me. Like, no, you are where you need to be. You are exactly in the spot that you need to be in. And all in all, it's a good thing to have just the people around me that are supporting me and lifting me up. And I found that here at Grace Church in Worcester.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. That's incredible. And now you found it, and you've not just found it, you're living it and you're operating in it, and now you're leading and overseeing a big part of it, all of it. And that's awesome. So dude, let's talk about that. What are some of the tensions? Like, what are some things you're facing of like, hey man, I feel like these are some growth barriers, whether, whether that's interpersonal growth or even growth as far as the ministry and scale. I know that we've talked a little bit about some discipleship and follow-up process, and I know y'all use Trello and looking at some boards and stuff like that, but even the team management stuff, what's some tensions that you're facing right now that maybe some coaching help can get you through?
Yeah. So, I think a couple of major tension points that I'm feeling is, it's funny. I'm going to be going from this into our team meeting later this afternoon, and I'm realizing, that even just something as simple as like, I'm the one setting the agenda now and thinking about like, vision casting and different things like that. Whereas before, I was the one that was in the room giving ideas, being a part of it. But now I'm the one that's responsible for not just thinking about the things that I need to think about, but also thinking about the things that, our student resident needs to think about, our admin assistant needs to think about. And, basically realizing like, that there's a jump between being a high performer and being a manager. And I need to, close that gap a little bit, and just get myself structured, get myself organized in a way to where I can be a benefit to the people that I'm managing and also not be held back in any way with my own deadlines and different things like that.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And let's camp out there for a second, because I think I have a lot that I can help with. But dude, what you just said is so true. I mean, one of the things here at United City, the church that I'm at in Houston, Texas, I lead a team of 5. And one of the things that I just quickly realized is in previous seasons, it's easy to be an operator, but when you have to be a creator, everything changes. And it's like what you just said. Like, I realized I can't have a bad Monday. Like, because if I have an off Monday and I'm a little scatterbrained, I'm a little unorganized, then now it's not just me who doesn't have clear lane and focus. That affects 5 other people. Or in your case, your team, 3. You said you got 3 other people, right?
Yeah. So we have a resident who oversees a lot of what our high school does. Yeah. And the other funny thing too with this is we're trying to figure out, what does his next step look like? Coming up in May, he'll either be transitioning into a full-time role with us or onto whatever's next, depending on what opens up. So we have him, we have an admin assistant, we have a ministry assistant who also is transitioning onto something new. We're trying to figure out what that looks like. And then we have a content creator, social media guy who does about 10 to 15 hours a week for us.
Yeah. So not only are you managing a team, you're managing some team also that's in transition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So all those things, a buddy of mine, and Chris, if you're watching this, you're more than a buddy. You're a good friend, bro. Love you. He leads a church in San Antonio, or a youth ministry in well, actually, I don't even know what he does anymore. He's like campus pastor. He's always changing jobs. Just kidding. He's great. Okay. Anyway, off topic. He was telling me something of like, hey man, I was talking about leading teams and the same thing you're talking about, Sean. And he was like, hey, you got to adopt this mindset that says they got to see it in me first. And so in everything that you do and you lead the team, kind of that vision piece, like even the energy piece, like, dude, if you kind of roll in on a Tuesday and, just to catch everybody up, you do Sunday night youth ministry, Monday's your day off, you come in back on Tuesday. So if you roll in on Tuesday to start the week and you're dragging, or maybe your perspective is off or whatever, it's going to affect everyone else. So a quick, like tactical, super practical, coachy thing that I found that really helps this is your team meeting. And here's what I'd say about meetings. You're either a meeting guy or you're not, right? Like people either like are energized by meetings or they hate meetings. But I found that a good team meeting at the beginning of whatever your work week is, either a Tuesday or Monday, ours are Monday at 8:30. And maybe some of my team hate that, but I'm a morning guy. And so like I thrive in the morning, and I know they're going to get the best me at 8:30, like right at the start of the day. But it's a good team meeting. We call ours our tactical meeting. And I just want to go over my tactical meeting with you. And then let's talk kind of about like how you lead that team meeting, and maybe even try some of this stuff today, like in your Tuesday meeting with your team, and see how that goes. Because I think a meeting that can, give good tactical information is what we call ours, our tactical meeting, but also can give some vision and give some heart and give some pastoral leadership, helps start the week in a direction. And now, instead of trying to get a hold of everybody, you're maintaining the momentum you created in that first tactical meeting. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
So ours starts, I like to keep mine very time bound to 60 minutes. And so like they know like, hey, it's an hour long meeting. I think meetings that change time, or start late or go over, like nobody loves those meetings, the unpredictable, like my time is valuable. I want my time. So I try to make a commitment to the best of my ability that it's going to be 60 minutes. Now, sometimes obviously we may go early or over, but I really fight to keep that 60 minutes. So, and you can run this in Trello. Like, honestly, you could run this as a board, like with different agendas and like little blocks that you want to talk about. We use Asana. And so I use our meeting agenda in Asana as a list view. And I'll talk about why here in a second. But the first thing I do is I'll always, for the first 5 minutes, like I'll lead a Devo/prayer. And that's not like a sermon, that's not whatever. Like that's my time to be the leader and be transparent and kind of leak a little spiritual vision. Hey, here's the work that God's doing in me right now. Vulnerability breeds vulnerability. As much when you open up, you give other people permission to do the same. And so you're creating culture and community on your team. So I always say, hey, like I get up at 5 a.m. and I walk 2 miles, not because I'm super spiritual and healthy, just because if I don't, like, I just am not the best me. Okay. So, and I'll be like, this is what I was reading this morning, or this is what I was listening to, or this Bible Project podcast, like really spoke to me or whatever. And I try to give that also like a United City Youth fix too. So it's like, hey, if God's really been working on my heart about the importance of his word in 2 Timothy chapter 3, and don't cling to a form of godliness, but deny its power, which is the word. Man, hey, how are y'all doing with God's word? And how are we leading students? Like, how are we going to lead students this week to like value God's word? And then I'll pray. And then the next thing that we go into for a minute is calendar update. So I'll go prayer, Devo, calendar, and that's where in Asana, or you can use whatever system you want to use, or you can just ask. I'm just saying, hey, what are the important meetings you have this week? So what people are you meeting with? And that could be anything from a shoulder tap, which is what we call recruiting. Hey, I'm shoulder tapping this guy, letting him know he could be great. Or I'm doing decision follow-up with somebody. And so, they've decided they have a next step. And so I want to help them take that next step. Or I'm doing some sort of leadership development. We kind of narrow it into those three. And so, that way we're not just hanging out with people, but we're hanging out with people on purpose, right? And so we'll just do a quick run through that. And the reason we do that is because how many times in church context have we had the all-star stud volunteer, and that dude or that girl will get met with about 5 times in the week because everybody's like, oh, I need to check in with Johnny. I need to check in with Johnny. It's like, well, we checked in with Johnny 5 times, 5 times this week, So that's just kind of a thing. And then, so we go prayer, Devo, calendar, and that's a minute. And then for about 5-ish minutes, we'll hit a recap. And so I have a stat sheet. Actually, I use SSM's stat sheet. And so if you guys are interested, we'll link it in the notes for the show, but you can get the stat sheet. I think it's like $15. And that is just like a weekly tracker, like of our numbers and some of the metrics, even like decisions made. And so we'll just recap that Monday. Hey, here's this last week, Wednesday and Sunday. Here were kind of the numbers and where we're at. And I do that because I oversee a ministry and it's my responsibility. So you got to know the numbers and know the reach and kind of your ministry. And so we'll do that. And so I recap the metric side, and then I recap their last week HIT tasks, HIT, high important tasks. And so this is kind of where this is going to cross over, and this may get a little confusing. What that HIT, the recap of that HIT task is the very next thing that we're going to talk about. So every week after the recap, I have them tell me, hey, what are your 3 HIT tasks? And here's what I mean by that, Sean. I make them get super specific. These are the 3 highly important tasks that you're going to do this week that are going to move the ball forward. And they're very specific. So like, say we have an event coming up. It's not work on Encounter Weekend. It's, hey, this week I'm working on 4 signups for these middle school boys for Encounter Weekend. You see what I'm saying? And so when I recap that, I get to either call out or call up. So I either get to be like, hey, Sean, last week you said that you were going to balance the budget. And you did it, dude. And you did a great job. That's amazing. Now that's something I would do. That's a bad example. Or I get to be like, hey, how did that, coffee go with Coach Murphy or, whatever. And so I can call things out and I can call them up. I can celebrate them, or I can kind of coach, be like, hey, did you get that done? Or man, I saw you got that done. Next time, let's try this or whatever. And then after I recap those things, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so with these are things that they've already sent into you. This is a recap of the week before.
It's a recap of the very next thing we're about to talk about. So because after I recap it, then I go, okay, well, what are your HIT tasks for this week?
Got it.
And so on Thursdays, like my Thursday afternoon is when I'll pull their HIT from this week and make it my recap for next week, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So once we move out of recap, it's just this week. And so it's, hey, what are your HIT tasks for this week? And they'll tell me those 3 high important things, each one. And I don't really make them explain. I just go, okay, that sounds good. Sounds like we're all in the right direction. And then we'll go to action items. And action items, anyone can put stuff in action items. So in the agenda, that's why I love a digital agenda, because everyone can add stuff to it. So whether it's a Trello board or whether it's Asana, they all are just popping in little quick things. And so maybe it's we need to clean something up, or maybe it's we need to order more Gatorades, or maybe it's, hey, I've got this opportunity for this on-campus event, and I need you to buy this thing for it, or whatever it might be. That's just all the action stuff that we need to get done. And then after those action items, we have a section that we sit in for about 35 minutes that I call IDS. And that's just identify, discuss, or solve. And really what that is anything that needs kind of longer conversation and brain power. And so like in that IDS section, like anyone can put stuff in there. And someone may put, hey, on Wednesday, I noticed our check-in numbers were off of our head count numbers. And I don't know what's going on there with that, but we need to identify, discuss, and solve like what's going on at check-in. And after we do IDS and we talk about maybe all those things, or like sometimes I'll take the staff through a book. And so I may leave like a little section in there of like, okay, and once we do all that, we're going to talk about vertical church or whatever. Then after that is coming up. And so for a minute, 60 seconds, I just will highlight, hey, here's the next big thing, next big thing, next big thing. And I'll put global stuff in there too. Like if I know we're doing a parenting conference and they may get assigned stuff for it, like, I just kind of give them the vision. And at the end, for the last 30 seconds or so, I say, hey, rate this meeting. And I let them all rate me on a scale of 1 to 10 of how good the meeting was, because I don't want to lead meetings that suck, And so that's a way for me to get good feedback. And then if one of the team members is consistently rating it low, I don't get defensive. I just go, hey, Sean, can we grab coffee? And then we grab coffee and I'd be like, hey, dude, for the last 6 weeks, you've rated our tactical meeting a 4. What's going on? Like, is that me? Like, is it just boring? Does it feel like it's not helpful? Do you feel like your voice isn't being heard? Like, could I do something better? And I don't mind sharing this because she's great. Our girls minister, she was rating our meetings low. And I was like, hey, what's going on? Like, is it me? Kind of what's the issue? And she was like, oh no, I just like meetings where I get to solve problems, not just check off tasks. It's like, okay, all right. Hey, now I know, let's do some more problem solving in our meetings because that's going to make her feel more bought in.
That makes sense.
And so that's a quick thing. Just, I think kind of when it comes to leading teams, that might be good. That was a lot of me ranting. So any kind of questions about that, or like how you might be able to implement that?
Yeah, I think, so we do a little bit of this, and we are moving more in a direction, especially now that we've adopted Trello. I really like what you mentioned about like with action items, that anyone can add items to that. Because one of the struggles that I feel, especially with taking on these new responsibilities, is that so often I feel like I'm the one that doesn't only need to think about my own tasks, but I need to be thinking about like what our resident Stone is doing. Like I need to be thinking about what our admin assistant is specifically thinking about. And then because of that, I sometimes feel like I'm getting into the weeds on stuff that they should be the ones that are like not only just doing, but the experts on. I don't need to know the ins and outs of how our church database, like event systems, like set up, like does check-in work, different things like that, because of the fact that they've been assigned those tasks. But if they are having a problem with it, they need to have the freedom to bring it to the team to talk about it. So that was one that was huge. And then I really like that idea of the high important task, having them recognize for themselves what it is, and to also have a level of follow-up afterwards, like you were saying, that they set it each week for themselves and then it gets talked about the week after. I feel like a lot of times for us, and maybe it's just the nature of ministry too, but like every week there's big important tasks that have to happen, and it's really easy for them to be like, okay, well, now that we've gotten, for us, for example, we've got our big winter retreat that we're launching our signups for this Sunday. It's really easy to say next week, like, well, that's in the past, but to actually follow through and to follow up with them of like, hey, how did that go? Like that type of thing.
How many did you get registered? What kind of payments? Yeah, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that is really, I think, monumental for me, thinking about how to lead that meeting well, how to lead our agenda, and even just the follow up of things. And I think it would be a massive improvement from where we're currently at.
Yeah. Well, it's good too, because the hit list helps you say, hey, these need to be high important tasks, right? And so the good thing about that is, one, you're providing the accountability because you're following up on it. But two, you get to test their self-awareness. And so like I've had staff before that put something on a hit list and I'm like, hey, dude, I love you, but that is not highly important. Like,
yeah,
that, because sometimes I feel like they're just tempted to be like, oh, well, every week I do this and I check this box, and I was like, no, what are you doing that's actually advancing the mission of our ministry? Like, what are you doing that's moving the needle? And you're just asking for those 3 things, and it helps refine them and make them think about it. But it also helps clarify to you, hey, do they know how to think through high important tasks?
Yeah, and I think that's
kind of shape and mold that.
Brilliant, because we spent a little bit of time at the beginning of this talking about my development from intern to director now, and I think probably the biggest piece for me as a growth step was that like self-starting, like thinking further down the road, not just like in the here and now, but what's the thing that's coming up 3 weeks from now that I also need to be working on. And I was blessed enough to have a supervisor above me that was helping me to develop those types of thought processes, but that seems like a really easy thing for me to adopt, to instill into them to be thinking in the same way. Like it makes me think when I was in driver's ed, the coach gave a lot of, I'll say advice. I won't say if it was good advice or bad advice, but there was advice thrown out. And but the one thing that really stuck with me was He was like, you keep wobbling too much because you're looking directly in front of the car. You need to lift your eyes up. And that like was something like, it seems silly at the time because I was like, well, yeah, I guess I'll look at the end of the road instead. But taking that as a leadership principle, it's like super important to me. If I'm only looking at this week, then I'm, especially now that I'm a director, like I'm not doing the things I need to be doing. It's about lifting your eyes and getting I love what you said, the high important. It can't just be the rote things that can almost be automated. It needs to be, what's the thing that's actually moving the ball forward?
Yeah. No, man, that's really good. And like what you just said is so gold. Like you got to lift your eyes up and look down the road. And I feel like as the leader and even the manager of a team for your leadership, your job is to somehow actually do both, because they're relying on you to make sure that you are looking down in the sense of they're getting stuff done this week, right? Like we're paying them and we need to make sure they're productive. But at the same time, if that's all you do, then you lead them to veer off the road because you're missing the big turn coming up or whatever. And so I think the weekly tactical meeting helps you do both. It helps you jump in and get insanely focused on the hit list for this week and recap, but then it also allows you to pull back and say, hey, I'm setting the lane, I'm setting the agenda for this meeting, and you guys can add stuff, but I'm really going to use this to make sure your head's up about this upcoming thing, or that we're readjusting and shifting our awareness to what highly important is and what we need to be doing. And I'm going to give you some coaching and some celebration and some, feedback along the way. And the other great thing is, dude, that's just an hour. And so you get to get productive and you get to develop people in 60 minutes. And it's going to happen every week. And, it's kind of regular and ongoing. And that's what I love about the hit list is the more it goes over time, the more you get to see people's development and even see kind of like if that hit list isn't improving, then I'm not leading well.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I think it's an easy, scalable strategy to just, bring growth and a little more intentionality to it. And then the other hack about that, I would say, is you got to also, and you talk about this tension, then you've got to plan that meeting ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I usually am planning our tactical meetings Sunday evenings. Now I know that's different for you because you're programming on Sunday evenings. But for me, I'm sitting down Sunday afternoon, evening, sometimes just kind of glancing over things, making sure I've got the agenda and we're ready to rock and roll. And sometimes I'll add stuff on Thursday, especially like end of day, like as stuff as the ministry week really kind of has happened for us. And be like, okay, hey, this got done or this didn't, or we need to talk about this. And it's an easy way to kind of do that. And then we can talk about that in some of our in some of our other coaching sessions that we have just privately, but I've got a ministry check-in meeting and a pulse meeting. And so our ministry check-in meeting is after one of our other ministry team meetings on a Monday. Then we have like an all-staff prayer and Devo time. So we'll have our tactical, go to all-staff prayer and Devo. And then 30 minutes after that meeting, I always have a ministry check-in. And so like I'll meet with the girls ministry, be like, all right, ministry check-in for girls ministry. You give me the update. Like, what's all the stuff that's going on? Talk to me about all the in the weeds stuff that you're talking about that like doesn't need to be in that meeting. I've got a 30 to 45 minute ministry check-in of like, hey, you tell me everything I need to know. So that way, if I'm liaising with lead team at any time this week, I can speak specifically to, well, in our church management system, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
And then the pulse is just a once a month check-in where it's just person. And so I schedule that at a Starbucks that's off campus. It would be dope if we had a Starbucks on our campus. Of course it's off. But, it's off our property and we sit down over coffee. I always buy and I say, hey man, how's your soul? Like what's going well? What's not? How can I pray for you? And like I've cried in those meetings. I've laughed in those meetings, and it's just if you lead people, you got to love them. And if you're going to love them, you got to get to know their story and their heartbeat. It's a safe place, and so that's kind of how I use those 3 meetings. So in total, it's like 2 hours a month,
Yeah.
or 2 hours a week. And so It's an easy way to do it.
That makes sense. And, I love the ministry pulse idea, because that's something that has also been kind of a challenge for me, is before, especially with being kind of on like the same level as a lot of the other staff on our team. Like, and I hate even using level, because it makes it seem like there's like a,
yeah, like I leveled up and you didn't.
Yeah. But at the same time, like something that I'm realizing is like, especially, I'm a little bit older. I'm now 5 to 6 years into my ministry. It's student ministry. So a lot of times the people that we have, working in our department are, fresh out of college, that 22 to 25 range, more or less. And, what I'm realizing very quickly is, I used to be in the heart of almost all those conversations. I had an idea of what was going on. And now I'm realizing, fairly regularly, I'm actually one of the last people to find out like some of the, important stuff, because I'm the supervisor now. I'm no longer like
your boss now.
The buddy. But yeah, like we had one the social media content creator on our team, got engaged over the summer, and he told me ahead of time that it was happening, but he told everybody else like way ahead of time that it was happening. And so I was still honored to know, but it was just one of those, like, it was a wake up call for me of like, oh yeah, I'm in a different boat. It's a different season, because I'm not going out to eat after lunch with them as consistently, because I've got, my own family and different things like that. And, it's just kind of, it's unique. It's interesting. And it's unique in the sense that like, I'm new to it, but it's also not unique in the sense that like, I'm quickly becoming aware of like, oh yeah, this is what everybody's life looks like.
Yeah. So, dude, our worship pastor, and he said this on a podcast. And so if you're listening or watching, go back and watch the podcast with Amos Rivera. But he said something profound to me. He's like, man, if you want to lead people by the hands, first you have to hold their heart. And that's such a creative worship pastor thing to say. Like, it's so, but his whole point and idea, and I really agree with it, is like, if you're just leading people to productivity, they're going to feel like you're using them for an end.
Yeah.
But if you're investing, and I know this is such church language, but let's just be real for a minute. If you're investing in them, and that means you're really thinking of like, hey, what do you want to be one day? What are the tasks that aren't just what I need you to get done, but when I delegate them to you, it's actually going to deposit something into you. It's going to teach you a skill that you need to go where you want to go. It's going to work on those stuff that you don't do so well right now. And not only that, but you're in my home. One of the things I always say if I'm like coaching people and they're having trouble with staff, I'll just be like, when's the last time they've had dinner in your house? And it's just like, man, there's always going to be that weird, like, you're the boss, you're the leader now. And so they're not going to, vent up to you anymore. You're not going to be in all the kind of hallway conversations and stuff like that. And that's fine, as long as you're creating the environment for you to be in the important ones, and so it's like, yeah, come to my house, and that see it in me first. Like, I want them to see in me at home what they see in me in the office. So they know Pat is just Pat. Like, it's just who I am. And I want you to, watch, I don't know. I want you to watch Tennessee beat South Carolina, like in my living room. Praise God, we did too, by the way. And as much as I want you to watch how well I lead this meeting or whatever at work. And so that's been something for me that's helped with those, and I'm behind the times too. Sometimes like, oh, you didn't hear? Nobody told you or whatever. It's like, no, I didn't. That's okay. But still, inviting them into my life, I think, has been something where they go, okay, like, he's definitely the boss. Like, he definitely has the influence and the authority of leadership. But that boss is behind me, and not just out in front of me telling me all the things.
Yeah.
But I think some of that is not really a problem to solve. It's just a tension to manage, and you're the leader, and there's just going to be a little tension.
Yeah,
sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, that's so good. I feel like there's so much I could just rant on and on about leading staff and loving staff and developing people. Anything else just about that meeting schedule as we kind of wrap up shop, that questions or anything I could clarify or help talk through or anything?
Yeah. So this is probably practical and just straightforward in some ways. So you said that you guys use Asana. I'm using Trello.
Yeah.
How do you actually set up your boards or whatever that looks like? I know you mentioned a list view. Like, what is it actually, just from a very practical sense? Like, how do you set up what that agenda looks like, what the team is going to be talking about, different things like that?
Yeah. So the reason I like Asana is you can go list, board, or calendar view for every project that you do. And so our list one really literally is practically like header, 5 minutes, prayer and Devo. Like header, calendar, 1 minute, and then all their stuff. And then recap, stat sheet, hit list. Then this week, hit list. Then action items, all the stuff. Then header, IDS, and then all the stuff that they can add like underneath. And so like if I was thinking about Trello, like what you're using and, moving left to right, like if you think about really the way boards should work is the boards are the process and then the cards are kind of the items.
Yeah.
Like I might go board, prayer, and Devo, board, calendar, like, hey, who are you meeting with? Like one board, but column, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like column, okay, recap, maybe a stat sheet, and then, hit list, and then column action items, column IDS, column calendar, column rate this meeting, and then put all those cards on that column and then just work left to right and say, hey, as we go through, this is what we're going to talk about in each kind of one of these. And we're not really moving them through because it's not a real project. We're sort of hacking the system to be like an agenda. But what I like about hacking that system is it gives you the availability for people to add their own cards and say, well, I want to talk about this and here. And then as the leader, you just got to say, hey, don't add anything to this. You can add to the calendar. You can add to the, obviously I want you to add to your hit list. I want you to add to whatever. And then the other cool thing as the leader, and I wanted to talk about this jogged my memory on it, is sometimes I delegate the entire meeting to someone else to lead. And then sometimes I may just delegate a portion. Just say, hey, Sean, today when we get to action items, I know that you've put some stuff in there. I know I put some stuff in there. I know the whole team has put some stuff through there. But I want you to lead us through that part of the conversation because I want to see how you lead. And one day, if I know Sean wants to lead a ministry, then I need to give him reps at learning to lead a team meeting under like the banner of my protection. It's like, hey, we'll learn to do it here. And that's another way that you can lead. So I don't know. Was that practical enough?
No, that totally makes sense. It was a little bit affirming just in the way that we have started using it. But obviously like I'm beginning this process. And so it's nice just to hear somebody else that is thinking similarly and, like I said, kind of giving it the stamp of, yeah, this is kind of how I would think about it. So, because that's not too far from what we're doing currently.
Yeah. Well, dude, that sounds great. Try that in your team meeting today. And we've got several coaching sessions. And so let's talk offline outside of the podcast. And hey, if you've enjoyed this podcast in this episode, this is exactly what coaching is like. Sean is one of our coaching clients and excited to help him in his ministry. If you're interested in coaching, man, we'd love to schedule a free 30-minute connect call, see how we can help you. And we thank you so much for being a part of the Simply Strategic Ministry community. We hope that we can help you grow your ministry through simple strategies and scalable systems. And we can't wait to see you on the next episode. Thanks so much.